unearthing some of life's real treasures now here on BBC Two, as we have a good old rummage through your home movies.
If you thought shooting video yourself and showing it on YouTube was a new thing, you'd be wrong. For 100 years, the British have filmed their own lives on their own cameras. And what 4 generations have shot tells a totally different story than all the official film. It's buried treasure, lying unseen, forgotten in thousands of attics and top drawers. A priceless archive that must be saved. This is 100 years of Britain's home movies.
For 6 months, we asked you to contact us about the films you thought might be special. And we've seen some incredible films with extraordinary stories behind them. Our experts Robin and Binny have helped with this ambitious project. Our film experts have been examining reels of amateur film from you and from the archives, discovering the stories of those behind and in front of the camera, telling a home movie history of Britain. Archivist Binny Baker is a social historian at the Yorkshire Film Archive. She'll be explaining the stories behind the most obscure footage.
Nothing tells the story in quite the same way, with quite the same sort of intimacy as these films by amateurs.
David Ellery is a historian and technical expert on every kind of film stock and camera we've used to record our world.
Wow, so this is the actual camera that shot all this archive?
It is indeed.
Fantastic.
Robin Baker is the head curator at the British Film Institute. He decides what films should be kept in their archive.
These films are incredibly potent and very accessible record of demonstrating the huge social change that's happened across the 20th century.
These are some of the stories we'll be telling today. Monty Python changed British comedy. This is their home movie footage, shot by Python member Terry Jones.
This is John killing me. I think it's what he would like to have done to me.
We hit Glasgow in our specially kitted out cinebus to find out about your films, including this amazing record of the raising of German ships from the First World War.
It was like a mighty whale coming up.
And we meet a Devon couple who've restored a 1960s mobile cinema and talk about the films they're planning to show.
This is exactly what Archive's about, finding little gems like this. You know, this is a legacy now.
Our nationwide appeal inspired people to search their lofts and cupboards to see what film reels might be lurking there. One discovery got our experts very excited. The collection dates back to the earliest days of amateur film in the 1920s and 30s. At this time, filmmaking was a pretty expensive hobby, and home movies from the period tend to show the lives of wealthy middle-class enthusiasts. These films, however, have been shot in and around London's Portobello Road and offer a rare glimpse of the lives of the working-class market stallholders who lived and worked there 80 years ago. The filmmaker, John Fitt, lived in northwest London, and he's recorded local events, from fundraisers and carnivals to funeral processions, all at a time of massive social and political change. Cine expert David Ellery has been exploring this incredible collection and is now travelling to the Isle of Wight to meet the film's owner, John Fitt's son, Mike.
We know the history that surrounds the film and in that sense some of the events that appear on there, but we don't have the personal history, and this is a great opportunity to actually be able to mesh the two together and piece the various parts of the puzzle together.
Mike has kept lots of family memorabilia, which should give David some insight into the young John Fitt and how he came to create this unique record of 1920s London.
There's my father. At his feet is the actual cine camera he used.
So this is him.
This is him here. And look, he's got a megaphone.
There's a megaphone in his hand.
So he's just about to direct the scene.
Very much the film director there.
Yes. So there he is.
And how old do you think he would have been there, roughly?
He's about 15, 16.
So very young.
Yeah, just started doing this filming.
This camera, we see at his feet in this
Yes.
photograph. Is that one of these?
Yes, this is it here.
Wow. So this is the actual camera
Yeah.
that shot all this archive.
It is indeed.
Fantastic.
He started filming in about 1924 when he was very young, and I suppose in a way it was like youngsters today. This was the iPhone or MP3 player, and he wanted the new technology.
It's a fairly early example of a 9.5 camera. It's a wind-up camera, so the photographer was completely reliant on a clockwork mechanism within the camera, and of course that determined the length of shot that he was able to get as well, because once it ran out he'd have to start again, wind it up, reset it, and away he went, unlike a modern camera with charged up batteries.
John Fitt's original films are too fragile to project, but we've had them copied using specialist equipment, and now Mike's going to see them screened at his local cinema. Mike's only seen a tiny fraction of the collection, which stretches back from the 20s right up to his childhood in the 1950s.
God, amazing. Well, this is amazing. This is the family home. Now, I've never seen this before. This was the house I grew up in, and that is the coronation. And they decorated the house for the coronation.
So do you actually remember that?
I do remember that.
And who's this that we're seeing?
It's my mother. That's me and my brother David in her arms. That is quite amazing. That's I remember that rocking horse very well.
So that was you?
That was me. I never knew any of this existed. It's quite amazing.
So that's a real surprise for you.
It is a big surprise.
Wonderful.
David is hoping that Mike can also shed some light on the earlier, rarer films shot in 1920s Notting Hill.
This is Portobello Road. That's my grandfather setting up his stall in Portobello Road, and we have a trade card showing what he sold.
Right.
So he was selling records and sheet music and various other things. And I believe that's my grandmother there with their stall. And actually, the stalls don't look a lot different from today.
The general scene is fairly similar,
Yes,
isn't it?
just the clothes are different.
Yeah, yeah.
This is quite amazing.
Quite an unusual thing for a young lad of 15, though,
Yes,
to be out with a cine camera.
Yes, he loved the silent movies, and he spent a lot of his time in the Electric Cinema on Portobello Road.
Now that's interesting, Mike. They are Labour MPs that have just been voted in. We can pinpoint that pretty precisely. That would have been the election of 1929. It's particularly interesting because that was when the Labour Party were very much in their infancy.
Really?
Absolutely. In fact, it was only the second Labour government. So we've got there something which in a social history context is very important, quite significant.
One of the most intriguing sequences shot by Mike's father shows thousands of mourners lining the streets of Notting Hill as a funeral procession passes by. Mike knows the story behind what was clearly a major local event.
This was a pub called the Golden Cross, which I'm not sure of the date, I think it's about 1927 and all. Terrible fire, 4 people killed, and for years, and I think it's still somewhere in a box, we had some of the money that had melted in the till.
Really?
So there was an amalgam of half-crowns and shillings all melted together.
We don't see the fire, but this is the aftermath.
This is the aftermath, and look at the flowers. Isn't that incredible?
And massive crowds, so this was obviously something that touched a lot of local people.
Must have done.
Would
Must
have
have
had
been
a lot of impact on the community.
Yes. Now, that's interesting. Why would he film steps? Well, that's him. That's my father.
Right.
That's my father, and he's about 16, I would think, there.
What do you think your father would have made of seeing his images up on a big screen like this?
I think he would have been just gobsmacked that, in the 21st century we're still watching them. Something he shot on a little cine camera and is proving to be so interesting, and possibly some of it quite important. It brings up the goosebumps, thinking these are living beings and they had lives, and it's all there before us. Absolutely. You can't touch them, but there they are on screen.
It's incredible, isn't it, Billy, to see 1920s London life recorded in such detail. A fantastic sort of insight into Portobello Road.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely extraordinary. And for me, what makes it more extraordinary is this was shot on 9.5mm by a 15-year-old boy. Extraordinary. And I think that's part of the excitement of the technology of the time. He had a brand new camera, and there he was, capturing whatever, and really whatever was in front of him.
I'm incredibly assured as well, the way he was shooting, and yet you can't imagine that he'd actually been trained by anybody.
No, he couldn't possibly. Young men will, and women, they'll play with their new gadgets, and that's what he did. And I think, incidentally, he happened to capture some of those very early shots. But later, of course, he gets a lot more skilled in what he actually does document.
This is about social history.
It's a great piece of social history, and what I love as well is the way he's documenting a kind of working class life in the surrounding area, which is pretty invisible in most home movies of that period.
So John Fitt would have been quite a Jack the Lad. He was an early adopter.
A very, very early adopter. You see really the kind of birth of amateur filmmaking in the early 20s. 1923, you see the arrival of 9.5mm and 16mm cameras. Those suddenly meant that film cameras, first of all, were easy to hold, light to carry around. Most importantly, the costs of them were coming down dramatically. That said, they're still in the domain of the kind of middle classes and the rich.
Well, this series is all about your home movies. As part of our search, we went around the country in our cinebus to see your footage and to hear about it in person. Our Glasgow trip gave us some great stories.